To worship is to stand in awe under a heaven of stars, before a flower, a leaf in sunlight, or a grain of sand. To worship is to be silent and receptive before a tree astir with the wind, or the passing shadow of a cloud. To worship work with dedication and skill. It is to pause from work and listen to a strain of music. To worship is to sing with the singing beauty of the earth. It is to listen through a storm to the still, small voice between and within. Worship is a loneliness seeking communion. It is a thirsty land crying out for rain. Worship is kindred fire within our hearts. It moves through deeds of kindness and through acts of love. Worship is the mystery within us reaching out to the mystery beyond. It is an inarticulate silence yearning to speak. It is the window of the moment, open to the sky. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley. My name is Bill Brown, and I will be your worship associate today. This is a welcoming congregation, and we are always working on how to better welcome one another together. If this is your first time here, we're so glad you've come. And whoever you are, we welcome you in the fullness of who you are. As we begin, we want to acknowledge this church occupies Huichin, the unceded territory of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people. We understand that as we continue to benefit from the seizure and occupation of this land, we acknowledge and embrace our responsibility to take restorative action. We affirm that this is deeply felt and commit our congregation to be in right relationship and with Indigenous communities, aligning in solidarity, supporting Indigenous projects, and caring properly for the land. All right, so please take a moment to prepare yourself and your space for our time together. Might want to grab a candle and a way to light it so you can join in the chalice lighting at home. Now, let us kindle our candles, or kindle our flames with the words of Albert Schweitzer. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude to those who have lighted the flame within us. We also pause to remind ourselves of some of the foundations of resilience. We light a candle of courage, a candle of acts of service, a candle of fellowship, and a candle of hope. May we find and cultivate these in ourselves and in one another. Now, please join us in singing our opening song, number 117, O Light of Life. The words will be on your screen. That was really good. Now, please join me in saying our covenant. Love guides this church. The quest for truth and justice is its common purpose. To give thanks, listen deeply, speak with care, honor our differences, and seek and grant forgiveness. These things we covenant with one another.
We take time in each one of our worship services to hold the things and to reach out and care for the things that we may each be holding, that may be going on for each of us. This is the time when we lift up and hold the joys, the sorrows, the concerns, and the challenges that we may each be carrying and facing. During our time of silence here in our service, or any time during the service, as folks so oftentimes do, I invite you to share any joys or sorrows or significant milestones of your own in the comments section. And I invite us all to hold these, both the ones that are shared and the ones that remain unspoken. I invite us all to hold these in the compassionate embrace of this loving community. Let us join now in a time of silence. Amen. On Veterans Day each year, we honor current and past veterans of our nation's uniformed services and their families for their service. We express our enduring gratitude both in words and actions to all who served, whatever their role, wherever their service took them. We say thank you to those whose service was brief, and we say thank you to those who made a career of their service. We say thank you to those who remember their service with fondness, and to those whose time in the service still may haunt them. We say thank you to those who return to us largely intact, who found jobs, started families, or continued families, and who continue to find ways to serve their communities. We say thank you to those who returned with brokenness so deep they continued to struggle to find a role or even a home in our communities. Our roll call today reminds us that these are not nameless people who serve, and it reminds us that many of these are right here within our own midst. It is quite easy to say that those who served gave their time and those who died gave their lives so the rest of us could enjoy our freedom. It is harder to honor those who died and those who served by resisting the erosion of freedom and by working to prevent war and armed conflict. As I name the form of national service with which you identify, I would normally, if we were in person, be inviting you to rise, but as we are virtual today, I invite you to share in the comments section, if you wish, the branch you served in, and if you wish, the years or the conflict or the location where you served, so that we can all honor and remember your service. First, we recognize those who served in World War II. We recognize those who served in the Korean War. We recognize those who served in the Vietnam War. We recognize those who served in the First Gulf War. We recognize those who served during the war in Afghanistan and Iraq. We recognize those who served in the uniformed services during peacetime. We recognize those currently serving in the uniformed military services, whether active duty or reserve duty. We recognize those who served in the uniformed military services of any other country in our world. We recognize family members of anyone currently serving in the uniformed military. We recognize family members of anyone who has served in the uniformed military services. Now, if we were in person, as I shared, I would have been inviting folks to rise with each of these. And now I would invite anyone who has a friend or neighbor who has served or is serving in the armed forces to also rise. And then I would invite us all to look around and see that nearly the entire room is standing. We honor your service and that of your family member, your friend, your neighbor. We honor the integrity and the courage of your choices to serve. We honor the sacrifices you made in service to our country. Thank you. And now also in honor of those who have served, we have a little bit of a musical special. Katya will be playing a medley of the different songs of the armed forces, and I will attempt to keep up and call out which branch the theme song is associated with. This is the Army. Marines. The Navy. Air Force. Coast Guard.
Des, what camera am I looking at? Thank you. Thank you for your service. Those 5 words can be some of the most sincere or empty words a veteran can hear from a complete stranger. I served in the Army from 2002 to 2006. And today I'm going to tell you a few things. I'm going to tell you the hella story, talk about my personal experience with thank you for your service, why apples suck, and provide some alternative things you can say in lieu of or in addition to thank you for your service. And finally, I'll tell you the coolest thing I did when I was in the Army, at least by my opinion. So we began with the hella story. Okay, 19 years old, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, just got to Iraq. It's the middle of June, 110 degrees outside. I am a stranger in a strange land. I get to where I'm going to be working in this very serious tactical operations center, and I am the nighttime intelligence officer, and I'm going to be doing all these briefings and tracking stuff. I'm doing all this cool stuff, and I meet my boss, and he comes up to me and says, "So, Brown, you're from California. You say words like dude and hella?" Well, sir, you know, I may say dude a few times, but I don't say the other one. "Come on, Brown, say hella for me." I'm like, "No, sir, I'm not going to." "Come on, you know you want to." I'm like, "No, sir, no, I'm not going to say it." "That's okay. One of these days, you're going to say it." 6 months pass. I'm doing my job, doing all this stuff, doing briefings, doing all kinds of cool stuff. 6 months pass. I go on mid-tour leave. I leave over, just happen to fly out Christmas Day. And this is this is going to be Christmas 2013. So I go home, I hang out with my buddies for 2 weeks. I come back. I arrive. He just finished the evening update briefing. I arrived too late for it. So I logged on to download the slides and see what's going on, get an update of what I missed. And he walks in, "Hey, Brown, good to see you. How was your trip?" "Oh, good. Okay, good. And he walks over and he's pouring himself a cup of coffee. And as he's pouring this cup of coffee, he looks over and says, "Brown, are my slides done downloading yet?" And he's still pouring, and I say, "No, sir, the internet's hella slow today." He kept pouring. The coffee overflowed his glass. He set the coffee pot down. He set his cup down. At this point, I knew he got me. This is a serious place. This is like the operations center. Like, this is a very serious place with serious, dangerous people, right? And he turns and he's just like, "You said hella! You said hella! It took 6 months, but you finally said it!" The entire operations center is busting up laughing because the California boy said hella. We are still friends on Facebook, and he still gives me a hard time about it. Anyway, yeah, hella. He always calls me, "Hey, what's up, bro? How's it going in California?" Anyway, so, yeah, that's my hella story. So, after that, when I was stationed in Texas, after my time in Iraq, you're in uniform. You go to the grocery store, you're in uniform. You're in uniform all the time, and everywhere I went, I would get stopped, and people would shake my hand and say, "Thank you for your service." And I never really knew what to say. Because thank you feels weird. You're welcome feels weird. It's just like I never knew really what to say. I am not a war hero. I was not doing daily patrols through Fallujah and all that stuff, you know. I was an intelligence analyst. For those of you who are familiar with the acronym, I was an REMF. I was not a frontline soldier in Iraq. I was a PowerPoint ranger. Yeah, statistics, mapping software, consuming coffee by the gallon. That was me. I did very vital work. I saved lives. That is a very long and complicated story for another time. But I was allowed to leave the base once during my tour. It was a surreal experience. The adrenaline, your hands are shaking, you don't know what's going to happen next. One hand on the steering wheel, the other hand on your rifle in your lap. Changing lanes under every overpass because somebody might drop something over the other side. That grenade you saw go under your vehicle, turning out to be an apple. Yep. I have PTSD from an apple. To this day, that apple is still in my brain. Anytime there's some debris in the roadway or something weird's going on, I have to audibly repeat to myself, it's not a bomb, it's not a bomb, it's not a bomb. Focus on my breathing. And I will say, you use the when I breathe in, those are actually surprisingly helpful. They really work. Yeah. I am not alone in my complex feelings for thank you for your service. It's tough. Many, if not most of my contemporaries feel the same way. We all join for our own reasons. It's volunteering. It's awkward. But nowadays, when we hear thank you for your service, it's usually a thank you for your service. Would you like fries with that? That's how it feels. Would you like fries with that? It doesn't mean anything. It's empty, numbing. Bumper sticker patriotism is what it feels like. And I think we can do better. So here are some ideas that you can use either in lieu of thank you for your service or add on thank you for your service. And so here are just a few that I wrote down. What was your favorite duty station? What branch were you in? What was the coolest thing you did? Did you see any USO shows? I heard those are awesome. I hope the VA is taking good care of you. And if they say no, tell them to reach out to their congressperson. Anyway, so I guess what I'm asking is don't just say thank you for your service. I mean, you totally can. If you know this person and you're familiar with them, it's different. This is just random strangers, someone you're meeting for the first time. Please try to build a connection. Be curious, be sincere. I still owe you the coolest story thing. So, back in the summer of 2004, over 4th of July weekend, in one weekend, I both wakeboarded and snowboarded in July. I think that's pretty friggin' awesome. So, I am going to leave this at that. Thank you so much.
So, Bill, I really appreciate your reflection this morning. Bill had actually written that a few months ago for a different service. He told me what it was, and I said, oh, no, please hold on to that for this service, for our Veterans Day remembrance, because I think it would be perfect to share with folks then. So, Bill, thank you so much for doing that. So, today we are continuing our delving into history, and today with some UU history, some Unitarian Universalist history, a little bit of Unitarian Universalist identity, because we're going to talk about our chalice. So at the start of each of our worship services, many of our religious education classes, our covenant groups and small groups, and many of our committee meetings, we do this common ritual. It happens in most UU congregations in some way as well these days. We light a chalice, often with some sort of words accompanying the lighting. And given that we also talk about the lineage of our faith tradition and how old it is actually far older than you might think. One might think this ritual of lighting the chalice has been around for a while also. In fact, you'll even find misleading information in our UU published documents. For instance, a collection of chalice lighting readings that's titled The Fire of Ancient Faith. But the ritual itself, that's actually rather recent. And the logo and the symbol aren't that old either. So here we go. You ready for it? The mystery of the chalice. Before it was anything else, the chalice was a logo. The year, 1941. The Unitarian Service Committee was working in Europe, focusing on helping artists, intellectuals, including authors and scientists, and dissidents to escape from Nazi-controlled areas. And okay, a slight digression for our newer folks here. You just heard me say Unitarian Service Committee, which wasn't shorthand. The Unitarians and Universalists were still separate denominations until they consolidated in 1961. So we're still 20 years prior to that. The Reverend Dr. Charles Rind Joy, Commissioner for Europe of the newly founded Unitarian Service Committee, who was known in the medical and relief communities for his translations of the works of Dr. Albert Schweitzer, who, by the way, is the author of our chalice lighting for today. Also, Joy was a former administrative vice president of the American Unitarian Association. He was the one who set the beginning of this chalice thing into motion. In order to help the refugees make it past the British blockade, they needed documentation. So Joy was fabricating documents to certify that the refugees were politically safe and sound to get them past the blockades. He felt the documents needed some sort of official seal. So he commissioned a Czech artist named Hans Deutsch to create an image to use as the seal. And there it is on your screen. Why this image? The only thing we have to answer that question is a letter from Joy sent to Boston, where the Unitarian Service Committee was headquartered. Okay, and another guess. Here's what Joy said, quote, "It represents, as you see, a chalice with a flame, the kind of chalice which the Greeks and Romans put on their altars. The holy oil burning in it is a symbol of helpfulness and sacrifice. This was in the mind of the artist," he said. The fact, however, is that it remotely suggests a cross. It was not in his mind, the artist's mind, but to me this also has its merit. We do not limit our work to Christians. Indeed, at the present moment, our work is 9/10 for the Jews, yet we do stem from the Christian tradition, and the cross does symbolize Christianity in its central theme of sacrificial love. End quote. All right, that's what we know. Along with others, I have one more guess. So as I've said, Hans Deutsch was Czech. And while I agree with the symbolism noted in Joy's letter, the fact that Deutsch chose a cup-looking chalice couldn't have been a coincidence, since other symbols could have conveyed similar meanings. So let's go a little bit further back in Czech history, and we'll find a priest by the name of Jan Hus. He lived during the late 14th and early 15th century and was a bit of a radical reformer, the kind that we UUs would probably like a lot. He wanted to make the rituals of the church not exclusive, but instead more accessible to his parishioners. So he read the Bible not in Latin, but in their native language. And for communion, which at the time meant the priests got the wine from the chalice, while the lay folk just got the bread, he didn't believe in exclusivity, so he shared the chalice and the wine with his people. And as you can guess, this was, early 15th century. The Catholic Church didn't like it one bit, and he was executed in 1415 for it. But his philosophies, specifically about sharing the chalice, were carried on by those who became known as the Hussites, after his name, Jan Hus, so the Hussites. This history was known to Czechs at the time of World War II. There's even a story that went around about a woman in a concentration camp who drew a picture of Huss's chalice in the dirt each day, and later told how that symbol gave her the hope to make it through. So I think it is no coincidence whatsoever that Deutsch chose a chalice as a symbol of hope for the Unitarians. So that's how the original logo came to be. It's a great story, but of course it doesn't answer the question yet. Somehow it went from being a seal used for a particular purpose during wartime to a more widely used logo, to the symbol of a religious group, all the way to a three-dimensional symbol and its own accompanying ritual. How did that whole transition happen? Now, the crazy part of this is that most of the official UU histories skip it entirely and go all the way from Joy and Deutsch to saying, Deutsch's original sketch has been adapted in countless ways. The end. But are y'all satisfied with that? Anyone? No, I'm not satisfied. So, guess what? The story, which we're about to go into, is even more interesting than I had originally even guessed it was. So, y'all ready for the story? Excellent. So first, it was a logo. We got this logo used by the Unitarian Service Committee, and then it started to jump back to the States and to other U and UU organizations. The Unitarian Service Committee, of course, picked it up first, and then later changed it to this, and then to their current logo, which, as you're looking at it, is this red logo with, if you look at it a couple different ways, you've got the positive space, as artists call it, the hands. But then if you look at the negative space, the space that isn't red, isn't ink, it's the chalice in the middle of there. It's pretty cool. The brand new Unitarian Universalist Association, formed in 1961, didn't pick it up immediately, but it did eventually become their logo as well. I forgot something, so hang on, I'll be right back. Can I get the blue Hymnal? Thank you. Nope, blue. There we go. Okay. I'm back, don't worry. The first hymnal as a combined religious tradition is this guy, published in 1964. This is the infamous blue hymnal, not the teal one we use these days. This is blue, titled Hymns for the Celebration of Life. Now, you can't quite see it because it's just an indentation on it, but it has a tree on the front and back cover. No chalice anywhere in here, and there's no mention of the word chalice anywhere inside the entire book. When the association did pick up a chalice logo, their first one was this. It is said that the double circles represent the two religious traditions coming together, the Unitarians and the Universalists. The off-center cross-like appearance, take a look at that for now, and I'll get to it in a minute when we talk about the Humilati. The next logo of the association was this. And then the current one is this, with this fabulous pink to orange colors. But I believe the introduction of the newest one created more debate and disagreement than any of the other ones combined. It wasn't about rejection of having a logo. It was about folks not liking this particular one, and okay, folks who might have been reading a bit more into it, but I'll leave that at that. So that's the story of the logo. The evolution of the chalice as a symbol happened on about the same time frame. Now, we've struggled with our identity and feeling like we have a common identity at all. And these struggles, in many ways, are still ongoing. Part of it, I think, comes from our evolution from being strictly Christian denominations with the distinct theological viewpoints to something, a bit squishier, less easily defined. I like the word squishy, though. The Unitarians opposed the doctrine of the Trinity, and they held up good and moral works as the ultimate goal of humanity. The Universalists, on the other hand, taught universal salvation and looked at the world in terms of love. But as the Unitarians and then later the Universalists moved away from a strictly Christian perspective to a more theologically inclusive one, the one that held not only deists and non-deists as well, then the definition of a cohesive identity got murkier. Hence the need for a common symbol. And pictures of the chalice began to creep in. They were painted on the sides of buildings and made into stained glass windows. There are some absolutely gorgeous ones. I picked 4 of them to show to you today. So I think we're going to go through those on screen now. And now, of course, the chalice is everywhere. On the fronts of our orders of service, for those who have printed orders of service, on business cards, on stained glass chalices that are given as gifts. It's gotten adapted in a variety of ways. Got a couple fun ones to show you. Here is a steampunk chalice. You like that one? Folks have made it into tattoos. Although, okay, the hair is a little bit less permanent one. Take a look at that photo too. And, you know, I am both amused and, okay, maybe we won't talk about the UU superheroes, Chalice Man and Flame Dame. I've actually met them in person. That's the 2 of them. Flame Dame stands behind Chalice Man, so you can see the flame coming up behind the chalice. Yeah. So that's the evolution of the symbol. But how on earth did that make the jump from logo to symbol all the way to this 3-dimensional object with a lighting ritual that gets done at the start of every worship service and replicated in virtually all of our UU congregations? There's the big mystery. But it's not a mystery. I got an answer for you today. And we're going to get there. Don't worry. Now, if you look at this older blue hymnal, if you look here, published in 1964, 3 years after the birth of the Unitarian Universalist Association, there are no references to the chalice, no readings of any sort for lighting anything. There's a little teeny section of opening words, but that's it. There's no fire represented there. None. 1964, but somehow it became a full-fledged practice because starting in the 80s and 90s, there were plenty of readings and liturgies for chalice lightings. All right, so the first lead to solving the mystery is a photo from 1967. You should be seeing it on your screen, but don't go to the next one yet. I just want the photo. It's from the Legacy Register, which was the predecessor of the UU World magazine. The caption under the photo reads, Louis J. Hofstetter, who is president of the Unitarian Fellowship of Hamilton, Ohio, when the group took out a mortgage on its meeting house, officiates a symbolic mortgage burning ceremony 7 years later. Now, I've done an informal survey, and the folks I talked to agreed that what's in front of him looks like a chalice. And that's before they saw the title at the top of the photo. You can show that title now. Now, here's where it gets fishy, though. Because, of course, we can't have clear answers for anything. The fellowship doesn't exist anymore, but a UU minister went through their archives and tracked down a member from that exact time. None of the orders of service in the archive mention anything about a chalice or lighting a chalice of any sort. And the member she tracked down had no memory of it either, nor did she remember the mortgage burning ceremony. Who knows how the photo title even got there? It might have even been a joke from one of the magazine's editors. So clue, not sure yet, so let's keep going. Lead number 2. Well, if we're going to talk about ritual, we have to talk about Universalist minister Kenneth Patton and the Charles Street Meeting House, which he opened in 1949. Now, while we are ever combating the misconception that the Universalism part of Unitarian Universalism simply means we accept all beliefs, kind of like a universal religion, Patton was actually trying to make that shift. The meeting room of the Charles Street Meeting House was incredible. I hope we've got that picture up right now. So I wish it could be in color. It's a black and white photo, but take a look at it. There's a painting of the Andromeda galaxy behind the chancel. Wouldn't that be an awesome behind the chancel? Come on. And instead of an altar, Patton put a bookcase with religious texts from all around the world. And all around the sanctuary are brass symbols from many world traditions. I know these symbols well because they were gifted to Star King Seminary where I studied, and I spent many an hour in the room where they were displayed. Although only a portion of them have been identified because apparently the folks who got together for years to make these symbols, once they finished making symbols for traditions they recognized, they had so much fun they decided to invent some more symbols too. So it's a rather diverse collection. One of the modern ways you may have seen this universal religion idea portrayed is in a collection of many religious tradition symbols, which sometimes includes a chalice. There's this beautiful one that you're about to see a photo of a stained glass window and a UU congregation in Rockford, Illinois. I had a necklace made with this one and wore it around when I was a hospital chaplain. And it was a little disturbing how many people were so excited about it who were not UU. So how many people were so excited, they told me with definiteness they were going to get a tattoo of it. So Patton was also a member of a group known as the Hymnal. This was a group of young Universalist ministers who were looking for more liturgy and more ritual in worship. In fact, this symbol that you're seeing came from the Hymnal. The off-center cross representing that even with a Christian identity that this group shared, that they were acknowledging there was room for more. By the way, you see the similarity? See, we got both images now. You see the similarity? I believe this was intentional. Anyways, the big thing is that Patton was a geek for rituals. At the start of each of his worship services, he lit a candle and, okay, get this, he lit a model of an atom. Isn't that cool? Okay. Now, I don't think it's a direct precursor of lighting a chalice, but he was hugely influential to an entire generation of UU ministers through the Hymnal and otherwise. And you know, without his influence, the ritual might have never taken hold once it got started. So how on earth did it get started? You ready for the answer? Our directors of religious education. That's how. Our directors of religious education and our children and our youth. It was in our religious education classes long before it hit the sanctuaries and adult worship. I love how our kids precede us on the big things. Did you know that the Unitarian and Universalist youth national organizations combined years before the adults could agree on doing it? Okay, that's a digression though, but isn't that cool? All right, so the lighting of the chalice. There was a refocusing of religious education that started in 1981 with the report of a group called the Futures Committee. They called for a reinvigoration of UU religious education and a focus on incorporating UU identity into our curricula. But that wasn't what did it, although it probably contributed to the practice taking hold. Religious educator Betty Jo Middleton remembers that classrooms were incorporating chalice lighting rituals before the Futures report came out. The chalice would be lit for a specific thing. Like they'd say something like, we light this chalice for, and then finish the blessing with something relevant to the day's topic. Later it morphed into saying, we light this chalice, symbol of our faith. Middleton herself published the first edition of a curriculum in 1978, which made no mention of lighting a chalice. But in the second edition in 1986, so 8 years later, she included chalice lightings. So somewhere between 1978 and 1986, the ritual spread to our classrooms. So when did it make its way into our sanctuaries? And how? Okay, let's start with how. Two pieces to this, and they both have to do with our children and youth. One is that if you ask folks who were UUs at the time to remember the very first time they saw a chalice lit in worship, the memory is usually that of a youth-led worship service. The youth were bringing the ritual they used in their classrooms into the service they were leading. And the other piece is just fun. It was also right around this time that kids started joining the adults for the first part of the worship service, like they do here. Prior to that, they were only in the sanctuary for a few special services of the year. And as the children started joining the adults for a little bit, the adults sought them ways to help them feel more included. So enter the chalice lighting. They said, okay, that's something the kids are familiar with in classes, so let's bring that little bit of their classes here into our sanctuary. It was a natural thing to include. And the chalice that was lit was often the classroom chalice, and the kids, when they would leave for their classes, would pick it up and carry it out of the sanctuary with them. Isn't that cool? So the other question we haven't answered yet is, when did it happen? So there's the how, let's get to the when. As of 1978, according to religious education expert Betty Jo Middleton, it hadn't happened yet. So I got digging in some of my older worship resource collections, because I'm a nerd and I have a lot of them. And I found a little gem from 1981. So not around in 1978, but in 1981, there was a little book published, soft cover. It was called Readings for Common Worship. It was published by the Unitarian Universalist Association as a supplement to the Blue Hymnal. And at the very back, it has 3 pages of what it calls for candle or chalice lighting. So it hadn't happened yet in 78, but by 81, it was making its way into sanctuaries, enough to have the association publish some common readings. Now, not quite the commonplace ritual yet, since as of 2005, worship surveys only reported 60% or so of our congregations lighting one. But you know, somehow in all the questions on the survey in 2005, the "do you light a chalice" question didn't make the list. But okay, we'll get into that another day. No worries. That's another mystery. So all in all, okay, that's the how and that's the why. The ritual started with our children and youth. Sometime between 1978 and 1981, started making its way into our sanctuaries. That's cool, isn't it? I thought that was totally rocking the first time I heard it, because I was looking for the picture and the minister who did it or this, and no, it was our kids who did it. It was our teenagers who did it. Now, you might be wondering why we're going into all of this, aside from it being fabulously interesting to geeks like myself. You know, we as a faith struggle a lot with our identity and how it is that we define ourselves and understand ourselves. In a lot of ways, the ambiguity of the history around the chalice is an example of this struggle. And since the chalice logo and chalice lighting ritual have become central symbols for us, it's a key part of our identity, whether we like it or not. Knowing where it comes from helps us to be able to better lean into that identity and to talk about it with each other and with others. So, mystery solved yet? Oh yeah, our children and our youth and our directors of religious education. And one more piece. Since the ritual came from our classrooms, instead of these fancy big metal chalices being the first ones, it is much more likely that the chalice that was used originally in UU worship services looked something like this. And if you can't parse out what that looks like, it's a flower pot turned upside down with a dish underneath it glued on the top, and it's painted, and you put a little candle on top of it. You see them in congregations everywhere. So anyways, there it is, mystery solved, the mystery of the UU chalice. All right. Bill?
As we commit together to making this a loving community, we take time to remember that UUCB needs our gifts and support. We invite you now to make an offering. Each week, half our offering is shared with a good neighbor organization who needs our financial support. We hope that you will continue to practice generosity with them during these difficult times. This month, our good neighbor is the Segorite Land Trust. The Segorite Land Trust is an urban, intertribal, woman-led trust that facilitates the return of indigenous land to indigenous people through the practices of repatriation, cultural revitalization, and land restoration. Segorite calls on native and non-native peoples to heal and transform the legacies of colonization and genocide. Offerings of any value are received with gratitude. Details on how you can give electronically will appear on your screen. Thank you. Please join me in dedicating our offering. We dedicate our offering and ourselves to the mission of this congregation to create a loving community, inspire spiritual growth, and encourage lives of integrity, joy, and service. Thank you.
It has been so good being together today. Even while we're all virtual, this is fabulous. And before we shift to our time after the service, I'd like to remind you to check out all of the wonderful things that are available in our congregation, even during these weird COVID times. You can take a look at our website, uucb.org, or in our weekly email, The Week Ahead, which can be found on our website, or if you're signed up for the list, in your inboxes every Friday. As we prepare to leave our worship service, I have a few things to note. First of all, our own fabulous Katya has an organ recital coming up on November the 21st at 2 o'clock, a fundraiser for the church, live and in person, as well as live streamed. And I hope that you can join us to hear wonderful music and raise funds for UUCB's general fund. And also, a little bit different than years past, UUCB's annual holiday drive is happening again this year. Donations can be dropped off at the church Monday through Friday, beginning after Thanksgiving, so November 29th. The drive will be culminating on Saturday, December 11th, and there'll be folks here to collect the donations from 10 to 2. Non-perishable items and cash donations to benefit the Richmond Emergency Food Pantry in this, which is their 50th year of service to this community. I invite you and your family, and invite your friends and neighbors to participate and join in giving gifts to those in our community with the most need, and during this virtual time, we may or may not be seeing them, but the need is still there, if ever greater. And Tess, did I have one more announcement? Yes or no? Okay. All right, so now we get to sing. So our closing song, now the closing song is We Would Be One. Fabulous song, but there's a little background for it too. This was a song celebrating the youth and the organizations coming together before we adults got to consolidate, but it's celebrating our youth. And now that you know the mystery of the chalice, you know why we've picked this one. The words will be on screen. Let's join in singing. Whether it is in the chalice or in the passion that we carry within, we share a fire to make things happen in this world. Let us not only take that fire and run with it, but let's encourage the fire and the passion and calling that we see in each other. And now, from this time together, may you go with hope, with connection, with peace, and with courage. And remember, you are never all alone. Blessed be.